In this battle game, we follow Legolas as he races against time to defend Frodo from the fierce Moria Goblins. Can Legolas guide the Ringbearer to the safety of Lothlorien, or will the Goblins have their revenge on the Fellowship once and for all? Following their dramatic escape from the Balrog and their ensuing flight from the Mines of Moria, the Fellowship, though exhausted, head for the forest of Lothlorien and the protection of the elves that live there. This battle game looks at what might have happened if Frodo had become separated from the others during the confusion. Only Legolas with his keen senses has the foresight and speed to reach Frodo in time, and he must now fight off the goblins and guide Frodo to safety. Frodo, finding himself unexpectedly trapped between two groups of goblins, realises that evil will strike first this round. The goblins, armed with bows, move cautiously, advancing just enough to get within range, eager to unleash their arrows upon the unsuspecting hobbit. Meanwhile, the orcs fleeing from Lothlorien struggle through the dense forest, their progress slowed by the thick underbrush. Frodo, sensing danger, turns swiftly and makes a dash for the nearest tree, hoping its trunk will shield him from the impending volley of arrows. One by one, the goblins release their arrows, but their aim is poor and each shot flies wide. Only the orc captain manages to find his mark, but even then, the arrow glances off without causing harm. Legolas, ever vigilant, retaliates with unmatched precision. His first arrow strikes true, but fails to wound, followed by two more that thud into their orc targets, leaving them wounded and removed from battle. The forces of good seize the initiative. Frodo presses himself against the tree, seeking cover from the goblin archers. Legolas, sensing the distance between himself and Frodo is too great, retreats halfway while keeping his bow at the ready. The goblins, frustrated by their ineffective bow fire and the tree now obstructing their line of sight, abandon their range attacks and advance with full force, eager to close the distance. In the dense forest, the orcs push through the last of the undergrowth, nearly free to make a full charge. Once again, Legolas draws and fires, taking down another goblin. His next two shots, aimed at the last goblin archer, narrowly miss their target. The tide shifts as evil gains priority. The goblins surge forward at full speed, closing the gap. Those with shields are now perilously close to Frodo. But Frodo, emboldened by his mithril coat, decides to confront the nearest goblin head-on, charging into the fray. Legolas, seeing Frodo engaged in battle, moves closer while drawing his bow to cover his friend. With a sharp focus, he targets the shield-bearing goblins, but concern for Frodo clouds his aim, and only one arrow finds its mark. Frodo fights bravely, but the goblins' ferocity wins out. Fortunately, the mithril coat absorbs the blow and Frodo emerges unscathed. With the goblin numbers dwindling, the forces of good regain the upper hand. Frodo catches a glimpse of the borders of Lothlorien and sprints towards safety, running with all his might. Legolas, gauging the distance, makes small movements towards the cover of the trees, staying just out of reach of the goblins. But evil will not relent. The goblins charge at full speed towards Legolas, their eyes burning with hatred. One goblin, faster than the others, reaches Frodo and engages him in combat. Another, seeking revenge for his fallen comrade, charges at Legolas, whilst the last goblin moves to support his ally in the next turn. Legolas, hearing the heavy breathing of the Moria Goblin captain, draws and fires all three arrows in quick succession. Each shot finds its target, two of them piercing the captain's armour and felling him instantly. Frodo turns to face his foe. With a flash of blue light, Sting slices through the air, cutting down the goblin with a swift and decisive strike. Buoyed by their success, the forces of good once again seize priority. Frodo dashes towards the safety of Lothlorien, pushing himself to the limit to reach the dense forest. Legolas, determined to protect Frodo, charges the nearest goblin. The remaining goblins, driven by bloodlust, continue their relentless charge. Despite his fear, one goblin, lured by the power of the ring, plunges into the forest after Frodo. In close combat, Legolas's twin blades flash with a deadly precision, and another goblin falls before him. Evil retakes priority. The nearest goblin, eyes gleaming with malice, charges at Frodo with the intent to seize the ring. Another goblin, despite witnessing his comrade's defeat, rushes at Legolas with a desperate fury. Legolas draws his daggers, but the goblin strikes first, his sword cutting deep and forcing Legolas back. In the dense forest, Frodo and the goblin clash in a fierce battle. The goblin, driven by savage ferocity, lands a wild blow that wounds Frodo, drawing blood. Legolas, his concern for Frodo growing, rallies and wins back priority. He charges forward, determined to reach Frodo in time. Frodo, spotting Legolas close by, retreats behind the elf, seeking his protection. But the forces of evil are relentless. The goblin archer takes a few steps forward, hoping to deliver a killing shot. He draws, fires and hits, but the arrow is once again deflected by Frodo's mithril coat. In the ensuing combat, Legolas's twin daggers flash again, striking down the goblin with swift, lethal precision. With victory within reach, priority stays with the forces of good. Legolas strides forward, entering the dense forest of Lothlorien, with Frodo close behind. The last goblin, sensing the end is near, makes a desperate gamble, hoping to avoid the incoming arrows and land a final blow on Frodo. But Legolas, sensing victory, draws and fires 3 swift arrows. All 3 find their mark, and the final goblin falls in battle. With no more enemies on the battlefield, Legolas and Frodo finally reach the safety of Lothlorien, their threat vanquished.